This story is titled, I Bought My Dream Car, and my entire family is furious because they think I should have given them the money instead. Hey Reddit, I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I'm currently being bombarded with angry messages from basically my entire extended family because I made a purchase that I've been saving for since I was a teenager. I genuinely can't tell if I'm being unreasonable or if my family is completely out of line, so I'm turning to the internet for some perspective because everyone I actually know is too close to the situation. Let me give you some background so you understand the full picture. I come from a pretty large family. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and my parents had me when they were very young, like 19 and 20. Growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. My dad worked construction and my mom was a stay-at-home parent until I was about 10, then she started working part-time at a grocery store. We weren't poverty-level poor, but money was always tight. Hand-me-down clothes, generic brand everything, vacations were camping trips at state parks, you get the idea. I have 3 younger siblings, my brother Jake, who's 26, my sister Megan, who's 24, and my youngest brother Tyler, who's 22. We were all pretty close growing up, typical sibling stuff where we'd fight sometimes but generally got along. My parents always emphasized that family came first, that we needed to look out for each other, that kind of thing. Which was fine and good when we were kids, but it's created some complicated dynamics now that we're all adults. Because money was tight growing up, I learned pretty early that if I wanted anything beyond the basics, I needed to earn it myself. I got my first job at 14, technically illegal, but it was under the table helping at a family friend's restaurant on weekends. From that point on, I always had some kind of job. I saved up for my own clothes if I wanted something specific, my own school supplies beyond the bare minimum, my own everything really. When it came time for college, I knew my parents couldn't afford to help me, so I busted my butt to get scholarships. I got a full ride to a state university for academics, which was amazing. I worked part-time throughout college to pay for my living expenses and graduated with a degree in computer science and 0 debt. I was really proud of that. After college, I got a great job at a tech company in a different city. The pay was significantly better than anything I could have gotten in my hometown, so I moved away. I've been at this company for 6 years now, and I've gotten several promotions. I'm currently making around $95K a year, which is more money than anyone in my family has ever made. I'm not saying this to brag, it's just relevant to the story. Throughout my 20s, I've been really careful with money. I think growing up with financial stress made me kind of anxious about money, so I'm a diligent saver. I max out my 401k, I have a healthy emergency fund, I invest regularly. But I also have a dream that I've been working toward since I was 15 years old. When I was 15, my dad took me to a classic car show. It was free to attend, and it was something to do on a weekend, so we went. At that car show, I saw the most beautiful car I'd ever seen in my life. It was a 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429 in this gorgeous blue color. I fell completely in love with it. The owner let me sit in it, and I remember thinking that someday, somehow, I was going to own a car like that. From that moment on, I became kind of obsessed with classic Mustangs. I researched everything about them. I knew all the models and years and specifications. I started a savings account specifically for my future Mustang when I was 16 and started putting every spare dollar I could into it. Throughout high school, college, and my 20s, I've been consistently saving for this car. My family knew about this dream. It wasn't a secret. I talked about it occasionally. I had pictures of Mustangs on my childhood bedroom wall. It was a known thing that I wanted to eventually buy a classic car. But I don't think they took it seriously, or they thought I'd grow out of it, or they just didn't think I'd actually do it. About 6 months ago, I found the perfect car. It was a 1970 Ford Mustang Mach 1, not the exact model I'd fallen in love with at 15, but close enough and honestly more attainable. It was in beautiful condition, fully restored, everything I'd dreamed of. The price was $48,000, which is a lot of money, but I'd been saving for 13 years and I had $52,000 in my car fund. I could afford it outright without touching my emergency fund or retirement savings. I was so excited. I did all my due diligence, had a mechanic inspect it, verified the authenticity and restoration work, everything. I negotiated a bit and got the price down to $45,000. Then I bought it. I actually bought my dream car. The car I'd been working toward for over half my life. I had it shipped to my city, and when it arrived, I literally cried. It was perfect, and it was mine. I posted some pictures on social media because I was excited and proud. I tagged it with something like 13 years of saving and dreaming, she's finally mine, and posted pictures of me with the car. The response from my friends was amazing. Everyone was congratulating me and saying how cool it was that I'd worked toward a goal for so long and achieved it. But then my family started commenting. My mom's first comment was, "Wow, that must have been expensive." My dad commented, "That's a lot of car for one person." My brother Jake said, "Must be nice to have money to burn." The comments felt kind of off, not quite supportive, but I brushed it off thinking maybe they just didn't understand how much this meant to me. Then I started getting private messages. My mom asked how much the car cost. I told her, being honest because I didn't think it was a secret. She responded with, "That's a lot of money. You know your sister is struggling with her student loans right now." That felt like a weird thing to bring up, but okay. Then my dad called. He started off congratulating me on the car, but then pivoted to talking about how he and my mom were hoping to redo their kitchen soon, but it was expensive and they were trying to save up. He didn't directly ask for money, but the implication was pretty clear. Then Jake called. He was less subtle. He straight up said, "So you have 45 grand to drop on a car, but you can't help me out with my credit card debt." For context, Jake has never been good with money. He's always buying the latest tech, going out to eat constantly, taking trips he can't afford. He's got about 15,000 in credit card debt from just living beyond his means. I've never offered to pay off his debt because that feels like enabling his bad financial habits. Then Megan texted me a long message about how she's drowning in student loans, how she made the mistake of going to a private school, and now she's got over 80,000 in debt, how she's barely making minimum payments, and how it hurt that I'd spend so much on a car when I knew she was struggling. For context, I've offered Megan financial advice multiple times and even offered to help her make a budget, but she always brushes me off. Tyler, the youngest, was the only one who was genuinely happy for me at first. He sent me a congratulations message and said the car looked amazing. But then a few days later, even he sent me a message saying that mom and dad were upset with me and maybe I should have thought about the family before making such a big purchase. I was confused and honestly kind of hurt. This was my money that I'd saved for 13 years for a specific purpose. I didn't blow my emergency fund or my retirement savings. I didn't go into debt. I bought something I could afford with money I'd specifically saved for it. How was that anyone else's business? But the messages kept coming. Aunts and uncles started reaching out, saying they'd heard I'd come into a lot of money, and did I know that Cousin Sarah needed help with medical bills, or Cousin Tom was trying to start a business, or Aunt Linda needed a new roof. People I barely talked to were suddenly messaging me about my car purchase and their financial needs. Then about a week after I posted the pictures, my parents asked me to come home for a family meeting. I live about 3 hours away from my hometown, so it's not a casual drive, but they made it sound important, so I agreed. I drove home that weekend, ironically in my new Mustang, because I was still in the honeymoon phase with it. When I got to my parents' house, all my siblings were there, plus a few aunts and uncles. This was not what I'd expected. I thought it would just be my immediate family. I immediately felt ambushed. Everyone sat down in the living room and my dad started talking. He gave this whole speech about family and how family supports each other and how when one person does well, they should lift up the whole family. He talked about how they'd raised me and supported me, and now that I was successful, I should remember where I came from. Then he said that the family had talked and they thought that I should sell the car and distribute the money among family members who were struggling financially. I just sat there in shock. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mom jumped in and said they weren't trying to tell me what to do with my money, but they thought it was selfish to spend so much on a car when I had family members who were genuinely struggling. She brought up Megan's student loans, Jake's credit card debt, their kitchen renovation, my uncle's medical bills, on and on. Jake said that if the roles were reversed, he'd help out his siblings without hesitation. Megan was crying, saying she felt like I didn't care about her struggles. Tyler was quiet, looking uncomfortable. My aunts and uncles were nodding along with everything my parents said. I finally found my voice and said that this was money I'd saved for 13 years for a specific purpose, that it wasn't like I'd suddenly come into money and was hoarding it. I pointed out that I'd worked hard, been responsible with money, and saved for something I really wanted. I said that everyone else's financial problems were not my responsibility to solve. My dad said that was a selfish attitude and that family should come before material possessions. My mom said she was disappointed in me for not offering to help when I clearly had the means. Jake said I was being greedy. Megan said I was privileged and didn't understand what it was like to struggle. That last one really got me. Privileged. I'd worked since I was 14. I'd got myself through college on scholarships and part-time jobs. I'd been financially independent since I was 18. I'd never asked them for money or help. Meanwhile, Jake still lived at home rent-free at 26, and Megan had made the choice to go to an expensive private school despite knowing she'd have to take out loans. I said all of this, maybe not in the calmest tone because I was getting upset. I pointed out that I'd made different choices than they had, that I'd been responsible and frugal and saved for what I wanted, and that it wasn't fair to expect me to fix their financial problems because they'd made different choices. This did not go over well. My dad said I was being disrespectful. My mom started crying. Jake called me selfish and entitled. One of my uncles said I'd forgotten my roots. It turned into this huge argument with everyone talking over each other. Finally, I just stood up and said I was leaving. I told them that I loved them, but my financial decisions were my own, that I'd worked hard for what I had, and that I wasn't going to sell my car or give them the money. I walked out while my mom was still crying, and my dad was yelling after me about family loyalty. I drove the 3 hours back to my city crying the whole way. I felt attacked and ganged up on, and completely hurt that my family couldn't just be happy for me achieving a goal I'd worked toward for 13 years. Since then, the messages have been nonstop. My mom sends me guilt-trippy texts about how I've changed and money has made me selfish. My dad sends articles about the importance of family and helping each other. Jake has blocked me on social media. Megan keeps sending me screenshots of her student loan statements like that's going to change my mind. Extended family members are weighing in. Some agree with my parents that I should help out family. Others are staying out of it. A few cousins have reached out privately to say they think my family is being ridiculous, but they don't want to say so publicly because they don't want to become targets. My parents have started posting vague things on Facebook about ungrateful children and how they sacrificed everything for their kids only to be forgotten when those kids became successful. They don't name me directly, but it's obvious who they're talking about. Family friends keep commenting with supportive messages for my parents, and I'm getting painted as this selfish, greedy daughter who abandoned her struggling family. The worst part is that some of their friends who don't know the full story have reached out to me with messages about how I should reconsider and help my family. I've had people I haven't talked to in years messaging me about how disappointed they are in me. I've stopped responding to most of the messages because I don't know what to say anymore. I've said my piece and they're not listening. But the constant barrage of guilt and accusations is really getting to me. I'm starting to second-guess myself. Is $45,000 too much to spend on a car when I have family struggling financially? Should I have helped them instead? But then I think about the fact that I saved this money specifically for this purpose for 13 years. I think about how I've been financially responsible my whole adult life. I think about how Jake's credit card debt is from irresponsible spending, how Megan chose an expensive school, how my parents want a kitchen renovation which is a want not a need. I think about how none of them have ever offered to help me with anything, not that I've needed it, but the expectation seems to only go one way. I also think about the fact that if I give in now, where does it end? Do I fund Megan's loan payments forever? Do I pay off Jake's credit cards and then pay them off again when he racks up more debt? Do I fund my parents' home renovations? Do I become the family ATM forever because I made better financial choices? I talked to my best friend about this, and she thinks my family is completely out of line. She said that my money is mine to do with as I please, that I don't owe anyone anything just because we're related, and that their reaction is manipulative and toxic. She said I should consider going low contact or no contact for a while until they calm down. I talked to my therapist about it. Yes, I see a therapist, have for years for anxiety, and she said similar things. She said that family obligation is real, but it doesn't mean sacrificing my own goals and well-being. She said the fact that they organized an ambush family meeting was manipulative. She said the social media posts and constant messages are a form of emotional manipulation. She validated that my feelings of hurt and anger are justified, but it's still my family. These are the people who raised me, who I grew up with, who I love despite everything. The thought of cutting them off or even reducing contact makes me sad. I want to have a relationship with them. I just want them to respect my choices and be happy for me instead of trying to make me feel guilty for achieving something I worked really hard for. I've been thinking about compromises. Maybe I could offer to match loan payments for Megan if she sticks to a budget I help her create. Maybe I could offer some financial literacy help for Jake. But then I worry that any help I offer will just open the door to more requests, more expectations, more guilt when I say no. I'm also worried about future events. What about holidays? Will every family gathering now be awkward and tense? What about when I get married someday? Will they even come to the wedding or will they boycott because they're mad at me? What about when I have kids? Will they be involved grandparents and aunt and uncles, or will this rift be permanent? A few days ago, things escalated even further. My mom called me crying, saying that she and my dad might lose their house. I panicked and asked what happened, thinking there was some emergency. She said they'd been counting on me helping them with their mortgage because money was tight, and now that I'd spent all my savings on a car, they didn't know how they'd make ends meet. I asked her to explain because this was the first I'd heard of them struggling with their mortgage. After a lot of back and forth, the truth came out. They're not actually in danger of losing the house. They just assumed that once I was making good money, I'd start contributing to their household expenses. They'd been budgeting with the expectation that I'd be sending them money regularly, and when that didn't happen, their budget was tight. I was floored. I've been financially independent since I was 18. I've never lived at home as an adult. I've never given them any indication that I'd be sending them money. But apparently they'd just assumed, and had been telling extended family that I was helping them financially, which explained why some relatives were surprised when I suddenly had $45,000 to spend on a car. I told my mom that I'd never agreed to support them financially, that I had my own expenses and my own financial goals, and that they couldn't just assume I'd be sending them money. She said that in their culture, successful children help their parents. For context, we're not from a culture where that's traditionally expected, we're as American as it gets, so that argument didn't really hold water. I asked her what happened to the money they'd budgeted for their kitchen renovation, because if money was so tight, surely they wouldn't be planning a renovation. She got defensive and said that was different, that they deserved to have a nice kitchen after years of struggling. I pointed out that a kitchen renovation is a luxury, not a necessity, and if they were really struggling, they should put that money toward their mortgage instead of expecting me to cover it. She didn't like that. She said I was being disrespectful and that if I couldn't help my own parents, she didn't know what kind of person she'd raised. Then she hung up on me. I was shaking after that phone call. I felt manipulated and guilted and angry. They'd been telling people I was helping them financially when I wasn't. They'd been budgeting money they didn't have based on assumptions about my money, and now they were trying to make me feel responsible for their financial problems. I called Tyler, since he'd been the least aggressive through all of this. I asked him if he knew about Mom and Dad's supposed financial struggles. He admitted that they'd been talking about how tight money was, but he thought it was just normal complaining. He didn't know they'd been expecting money from me. He also said that Jake had been ranting to the family about how I was probably making way more than $95K and was lying about my salary to avoid helping. That was news to me. Jake apparently thought I was secretly making like $200K or something and was hiding money from the family. Tyler said he'd tried to defend me, but Jake was convinced that anyone in tech was making huge money and I was being sketchy about my real salary. I asked Tyler what he honestly thought about the whole situation. There was a long pause, and then he said that he thought Mom and Dad were out of line, but he understood why they were upset. He said they'd sacrificed a lot to raise us and probably felt like I wasn't grateful. But he also said that I'd worked hard and deserved to spend my money how I wanted. He was trying to be diplomatic and stay out of it. I appreciated his honesty even if it wasn't entirely on my side. At least he wasn't attacking me. I told him I loved him and appreciated him staying relatively neutral. He said he loved me too and hoped everything would blow over soon. But it hasn't blown over. If anything, it's gotten worse. My parents have now involved my grandparents, their siblings, family friends, basically anyone who will listen. They've painted this narrative where they're struggling, possibly losing their house, and their successful daughter won't help them because she'd rather have a fancy car. My grandmother called me yesterday. She's 82 and I love her dearly. She told me she was disappointed in me, that family comes first, that my parents had sacrificed everything to raise me, and this is how I repay them. She said that when she was young, children took care of their parents, and she didn't understand my generation's selfishness. Hearing that from my grandmother really hurt. I tried to explain my side, that I'd saved for 13 years for this specific purpose, that my parents weren't actually at risk of losing their house, that they'd made assumptions about my money without talking to me. But she didn't want to hear it. She said excuses don't matter, family matters, and I needed to make things right. I got off the phone with her and just cried. I felt like my whole family had turned against me over a car. A car that I'd dreamed about and saved for and worked toward for over a decade. I felt like they didn't see me as a person with my own goals and dreams, just as a potential source of money. I talked to my therapist again, and she said something that really resonated with me. She said that my family was essentially saying that my dreams and goals mattered less than their wants and needs. That my 13 years of disciplined saving should be sacrificed because they made different financial choices. She said that was fundamentally unfair and that I wasn't wrong to set boundaries. She also pointed out that if I gave in now, it would set a precedent. My family would learn that if they guilt me enough, pressure me enough, involve enough people, I'll eventually cave. And then every future financial decision I make would be subject to their input and demands. She said that as hard as it is now, holding firm on my boundaries was important for my long-term well-being. I know she's right, but it's still so hard. I don't want to be estranged from my family. I don't want my grandmother to be disappointed in me. I don't want my parents to struggle, even if their struggle is partly self-inflicted. I don't want my siblings to resent me, but I also don't want to give up my car. It's not just a car to me, it's a symbol of 13 years of hard work and delayed gratification. Every time I look at it, I feel proud of myself for setting a goal and achieving it. It represents my ability to make a plan and stick to it, to save money even when it was hard, to not give up on my dreams. If I sell it now, it'll feel like my family's wants matter more than my dreams. It'll feel like I'm not allowed to have nice things because someone else might need money. It'll feel like punishment for being financially responsible. And I'm worried about the message it sends, both to my family and to myself. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what financial help actually looks like in healthy families. I have friends whose parents help them with down payments on houses or contribute to their grandkids' college funds. But those parents aren't struggling financially, and the help is offered freely, not demanded. I also have friends who help their parents financially, but it's because their parents genuinely can't work anymore or have serious medical expenses, not because the parents made assumptions about receiving money. The thing is, my parents are only 47 and 48. They're both still working. They're not elderly or unable to work. They don't have major medical expenses. They're not in poverty. They're just not as comfortable as they'd like to be, and apparently they decided that was my problem to solve. Last weekend was my mom's birthday, and I wasn't sure if I should go home for it. I asked Tyler what he thought, and he said I should probably come, that it might be a chance to smooth things over. So I drove home, again in my Mustang because it's my car and I'm going to drive it. When I got to my parents' house, the atmosphere was ice cold. My mom barely looked at me when I arrived. My dad gave me a curt nod. Jake was actively hostile, making snide comments under his breath. Megan ignored me completely. Only Tyler was friendly, giving me a hug and asking about my drive. I'd brought a nice gift for my mom, a piece of jewelry I knew she'd been wanting. When she opened it, she looked at it and said, "This must have been expensive. I hope you can afford it after your big purchase." It was so passive-aggressive and hurtful that I almost left right then. Dinner was awkward. Every conversation somehow circled back to money. Someone would mention something they needed or wanted, and then everyone would look at me like I was supposed to offer to pay for it. My uncle talked about needing a new truck, looking directly at me. My aunt mentioned her daughter's college expenses while staring at me. It felt like everything was a pointed message about how I should be using my money. At one point, Jake straight up said, "Must be nice to drive a car that costs more than some people make in a year." I responded that I'd saved for 13 years for it, and it represented a lot of hard work and sacrifice. He laughed and said, "Sacrifice, right? Because your life has been so hard." I lost it a bit. I said that actually, yes, I'd worked since I was 14, put myself through college, been financially independent since 18, and been very careful with money my entire adult life. I said that just because I'd made responsible choices didn't mean I hadn't worked hard or struggled. I pointed out that I'd never lived at home as an adult, never asked them for money, never expected them to solve my problems. Jake said that some people didn't have the opportunities I had. I asked what opportunities he meant specifically, since we'd grown up in the same household with the same parents. He said I'd gotten a full scholarship to college, and he didn't. I pointed out that I'd gotten a full scholarship because I'd worked extremely hard in school, maintained a high GPA, and applied for every scholarship I could find. I reminded him that he'd barely graduated high school because he spent more time partying than studying. This started a huge argument. My mom jumped in to defend Jake, saying not everyone was academic like me and it wasn't fair to judge. My dad said I was being elitist and looking down on the family. Megan said I'd always been the golden child and didn't understand what it was like for the rest of them. The golden child comment really bothered me. I'd been the guinea pig child, the one who got the strictest rules and highest expectations. Jake, Megan, and Tyler had all been allowed to do things at younger ages than I was because I'd paved the way. I'd been expected to set a good example, get good grades, help out more around the house because I was the oldest. I'd never felt like the golden child growing up. I tried to explain this, but no one wanted to hear it. They'd apparently constructed this narrative where I'd had it easy and they'd had it hard, and nothing I said was going to change that perception. It was frustrating and hurtful to be so misunderstood by people who'd known me my entire life. The birthday dinner ended with me leaving early after my mom made another comment about how I could afford to contribute more to family events since I had money for expensive cars. I hugged Tyler goodbye, nodded at my parents, and left without saying goodbye to Jake or Megan. On the drive home, I cried again. I seemed to be doing a lot of that lately. I felt like I'd lost my family over a car. A car that meant everything to me, that represented years of hard work, but still just a car. I wondered if it was worth it. I wondered if I should just sell it and give them the money to restore peace. But then I thought about what that would actually accomplish. Would it really fix things, or would it just establish that they could bully me into doing what they wanted? Would they be grateful, or would it just lead to more demands in the future? And would I ever be able to forgive myself for giving up on a dream I'd worked toward for 13 years? I called my best friend and talked it through with her. She said something that stuck with me. She said, if you give them this money, what are you getting in return? Their approval, their love, because you should have those things already, not as payment for financial support. She was right. I shouldn't have to buy my family's love and approval. They should support my goals and be happy for my achievements regardless of whether those achievements benefit them financially. The fact that their love and approval seemed conditional on me giving them money was really problematic. She also pointed out that none of them had offered to contribute to my Mustang fund over the years. Not for birthdays, not for Christmas, not ever. If they'd known it was important to me, if they'd really supported my goals, they could have given me money toward it instead of random gifts I didn't need. But they never did because my dream didn't matter to them. That realization hurt, but it was also clarifying. My family hadn't supported my goals when doing so would have cost them something, but now they expected me to give up my achieved goal to support theirs. It was a one-way street, and that wasn't fair. I decided that I needed to set some firm boundaries. I drafted a message to send to my family group chat. I revised it several times, trying to be clear but not cruel. This is what I eventually sent. I love you all, and I want to have good relationships with everyone. But I need to be clear about some boundaries. The money I saved for my car was saved over 13 years for that specific purpose. It was not available for other uses, and it's not fair to expect me to give it up. My financial decisions are my own, and I'm not going to discuss my salary, savings, or spending with the family anymore. I'm also not going to be guilted or pressured about how I spend money I've earned. I'm happy to offer advice or help in other ways, but I will not be contributing financially to anyone's expenses, loans, or wants. I hope we can move past this and have a positive relationship, but that requires mutual respect for each other's choices and boundaries. The response was immediate and not positive. My mom said I was breaking her heart. My dad said I was selfish and ungrateful. Jake said I was dead to him. Megan said I'd shown my true colors. Even Tyler, who'd been mostly neutral, said he thought my message was harsh. Only a couple of cousins reached out privately to say they thought my message was fair and they supported me. One of them said she dealt with similar family dynamics and it was hard but necessary to set boundaries. My grandmother called me in tears, saying I was tearing the family apart and how could I be so cruel. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to be cruel, I was just setting boundaries about my own money. She said that boundaries were just an excuse to be selfish and that family didn't need boundaries. That conversation with my grandmother really crystallized something for me. The idea that family doesn't need boundaries is toxic. Everyone needs boundaries, even with people they love. Maybe especially with people they love. Boundaries aren't about being selfish, they're about maintaining healthy relationships and mutual respect. I started doing more research on family dynamics and financial boundaries. I found so many stories similar to mine, people whose families expected them to fund everyone else's lives just because they were financially successful. I read about financial abuse within families, about guilt and manipulation, about the importance of boundaries. I also read about something called family scapegoating, where one family member becomes the target of everyone else's problems and frustrations. I wondered if that was happening to me, if I'd become the scapegoat for everyone's financial stress and poor choices. It's been about 2 months now since I bought the car, and the situation hasn't really improved. I've stuck to my boundaries, which means I'm basically estranged from most of my family. I still talk to Tyler occasionally, and one cousin who's been supportive. But my parents, Jake and Megan, have all but cut me off. They still post passive-aggressive things on social media. My mom recently posted something about how money changes people, and you find out who really cares about you when times are hard. My dad shared an article about entitled millennials who forget where they came from. It's all clearly directed at me, even though they don't name me. Some of their friends, who only know their side of the story, have sent me messages about how I should reconcile with my family and help them out. I've stopped responding to those messages. I can't keep defending myself to people who have already decided I'm wrong based on incomplete information. The hardest part is holidays. Thanksgiving is coming up, and I haven't been invited to my parents' house. Tyler told me there will be a family gathering, and I'm not welcome unless I apologize and agree to help financially. I asked what exactly I'd be apologizing for, and he said for choosing a car over family. But that's not what I did. I didn't choose a car over family. I chose to achieve a personal goal I'd worked toward for 13 years, and my family chose to make that about them. They chose to be upset instead of happy for me. They chose to demand my money instead of respecting my choices. The choice wasn't mine, it was theirs. I'll be spending Thanksgiving with friends this year. My best friend invited me to her family's celebration, and while I'm grateful for the invitation, it also makes me sad. I should be with my own family, but not if being with them requires me to give up my boundaries and my self-respect. I still love my car. I drive it and feel happy every time. It's beautiful and fun and exactly what I wanted. But that happiness is tinged with sadness about the family situation. I wish I could have both the car and my family's support, but apparently that's not an option. I've been thinking about what happens long-term. Will my family ever come around? Will there be a future where we can have a normal relationship again, or is this rift permanent? I don't know. Part of me hopes that time will help, that once the initial anger and disappointment fade, they'll be able to see things more clearly. But another part of me worries that the resentment will just calcify, that they'll never forgive me for not giving them money, that this will define our relationship forever. I worry about missing out on nephews and nieces if my siblings have kids. I worry about my parents getting older and whether we'll reconcile before something happens to them. My therapist says I can't control their reactions, only my own choices. She says I've set healthy boundaries and I need to stick to them even though it's hard. She says that sometimes doing the right thing for yourself means other people being upset, and that's not my fault or my responsibility to fix. I logically know she's right, but emotionally, it's still really hard. I was raised to put family first, to sacrifice for the people I love, to always be available to help. Undoing that conditioning is painful and feels wrong even when I know intellectually that it's right. I've started building a chosen family of sorts. My best friend and her family have basically adopted me. I've gotten closer to some coworkers who have been supportive. I've joined some car clubs and met people who share my interest in classic cars. These people celebrate my achievements without expecting anything from me in return, and it's been really healthy. But they're not my actual family. They can't replace my parents, my siblings, my grandmother. I'm building a good support system, but there's still a hole where my family used to be. Sometimes I wonder if I made the wrong choice. If I'd just given them some money, would everything be fine now? Would I still have my family? But then I think about what I'd be giving up. Not just the money, but my self-respect, my sense of achievement, my ability to make my own choices without family approval. And I think about what it would teach them. That if they pressure me enough, I'll cave. That my dreams and goals don't matter as much as their wants. That they can manipulate me with guilt and I'll comply. Those are lessons I don't want to teach, both for my sake and theirs. I recently saw something online that resonated with me. It said, "Don't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm." That's essentially what my family is asking me to do. Sacrifice my own goals and happiness to solve problems that aren't really my responsibility. And if I do that, I'll end up resentful and they'll end up dependent and nobody wins. So I'm sticking with my decision. I'm keeping my car. I'm maintaining my boundaries. I'm building my own life according to my own values and goals. It's hard and it's lonely sometimes, but I think it's right. I hope that someday my family will come around. I hope that someday they'll be able to be happy for my achievements without expecting to benefit from them financially. I hope that someday we can have a relationship based on mutual love and respect, not on financial obligation and guilt. But if that day never comes, I'll be okay. I have my car that I worked 13 years for. I have my financial security that I've built through careful planning and hard work. I have friends who support me and a therapist who helps me navigate complicated emotions. I have a life I'm proud of, even if my family doesn't appreciate it. And maybe that has to be enough. So Reddit, that's my story. I bought my dream car after 13 years of saving, and my family is furious because they think I should have given them the money instead. Some days I'm confident I made the right choice. Other days I'm racked with guilt and doubt. But I'm trying to trust that setting boundaries and pursuing my own goals isn't selfish, it's self-respect. If anyone out there is dealing with similar family dynamics, I guess my advice would be to trust yourself. Know that you're allowed to have goals and dreams that don't involve solving other people's problems. Know that you can love your family and still set boundaries with them. Know that their financial choices and struggles are not your responsibility to fix. It's hard. It's really, really hard. But I think it's necessary. And I hope that sharing my story helps someone else who's going through something similar feel less alone. Thanks for reading this incredibly long post. Writing it all out has actually been helpful for processing everything. And if you've made it this far, I appreciate you taking the time to hear my story. Edit, wow, I didn't expect this to get so much attention. Thank you all for the supportive comments and for sharing your own stories. It helps to know I'm not alone in dealing with family dynamics like this. To answer some common questions, yes, I'm still in therapy and finding it very helpful. Yes, I still have the car and I love it. No, my family has not apologized or changed their stance. And yes, I'm doing okay despite everything. Thank you all again for the support and validation. It means more than you know.